day 992 of this Trump administration, and it saw the president launch something of a new scorched earth offensive against the impeachment investigation. And House Democrats strike back with a new subpoena for a key witness. Tonight, the White House notified Speaker Pelosi and 3 House committee chairmen, took them 8 pages to do it, that they have no intention of cooperating with the inquiry. The administration's letter, signed by White House counsel Pat Cipollone, accuses the Democrats of seeking to, quote, overturn the results of the 2016 election. It calls the investigation constitutionally invalid and a violation of due process, and it argues that the president cannot permit his administration to participate in this partisan inquiry under these circumstances. The administration's letter asks Speaker Pelosi to abandon the impeachment inquiry, but stop short of demanding a vote by the full House. Not long ago, the Speaker responded, writing, quote, the White House should be warned that continued efforts to hide the truth of the president's abuse of power from the American people will be regarded as further evidence of obstruction. The administration's letter was sent hours after the White House abruptly pulled the string and stopped Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, from testifying to lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Sondland had flown from Brussels to Washington to do it, but was ordered not to appear shortly before his scheduled deposition this morning. President Trump offered this explanation, quote, I would love to send Ambassador Sondland, a really good man and great American, to testify, but unfortunately he would be testifying before a totally compromised kangaroo court. That right there, kangaroo court, was clearly today's talking point, and we know that because Trump's House Republicans were so excited to say it out loud.
What we see in this impeachment is a kangaroo court.
There has not been a vote to launch an impeachment inquiry because the minority does not have any rights for subpoenas, because the president doesn't have the right to have counsel present to ask questions, for subpoena power, to present evidence. This entire thing is a political charade.
Earlier today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who, remember, is this ambassador's boss, refused to respond to questions about why Ambassador Sondland was a no-show in front of Congress.
Mr. Secretary, we want to instruct Ambassador Sondland on testimony.
Thank you all. Good morning.
And the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee today accused the State Department of withholding information from Ambassador Sondland.
We are also aware that the ambassador has text messages or emails on a personal device, which have been provided to the State Department, although we have requested those from the ambassador, and the State Department is withholding those messages as well.
The House is now issuing a subpoena to Sondland demanding documents by October 14, testimony by October 16. That's a week from tomorrow. Texts released last week revealed Sondland's involvement in Trump's conversations with Ukraine's president and the concerns raised by other U.S. officials. Acting ambassador to Ukraine Bill Taylor, a career diplomat, messaged Sondland, quote, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. NBC News has confirmed earlier reports that Sondland replied to Taylor after talking with President Trump, and he texted back in part, quote, the president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind. He added, I suggest we stop the back and forth by text. Another State Department official, the former ambassador to Ukraine, is scheduled to testify to Congress on Friday. She, too, a career diplomat. Not clear, however, whether she will be allowed to appear. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting on new details about that Ukraine-Trump call back in July. The Times says, according to the whistleblower's memo of the call, a White House official described the conversation as crazy and frightening, that the official was, quote, visibly shaken by what they had witnessed. That official also reportedly described the call as, quote, completely lacking in substance related to national security. Tonight, sources are telling NBC News the Trump administration is consulting with former Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy of Benghazi fame about impeachment-related matters. Earlier today, Senator Lindsey Graham, chair of the Judiciary Committee, let's not forget, invited Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, to testify about his role in trying to get Ukraine to investigate the Bidens. Giuliani has signaled that is unlikely. We're also keeping a close eye tonight on developments in the Middle East. Reuters news agency, quoting an aide to the Turkish President Erdogan, reports Turkey's military, along with the Free Syrian Army, is about to cross over the Turkish-Syrian border. This is a big deal. This follows President Trump's decision to pull U.S. troops out of northern Syria after that weekend conversation he had with Erdogan. He's been subject to withering criticism ever since. Today, Trump announced the Turkish president will be visiting the White House next month.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.